I mentioned pricing, and the pricing section is a particularly important part of the response. Often when I go to my clients to talk about the results of a tender and I look at the documentation that's been submitted, the pricing section is obviously one of the ones that they go to first. So as I mentioned, it is important to have a very clear outline within your document section covering pricing, and particularly you need clarity around the components that go into your overall figure if you're quoting a project price, or a very clear outline of how your hourly rates will work in terms of the required piece of work you're being asked to do. The more information you can provide in the pricing section around added value services or not-for-cost services, the better. And a very, very clear understanding of how to use visuals in that section is particularly important. As many graphics as possible, as many tables as possible, often work a lot better than paragraphs explaining how your pricing is going to work. In terms of the response generally, again, stick to the simple rules of keeping the language active, using short sentences, very clear points around what you're offering. Ideally, each section of your proposal response should have a message attached to it that reinforces what you've been saying in the executive summary. You should be trying to use visuals throughout the document to bring to life the solutions that you're proposing, and you should make very certain that you have all the little things under control, particularly proofreading for typos, any errors around numerals, people's names being spelled incorrectly. All these things are important in making sure that you correct them to produce a quality response. Often in competitive situations today, the document is a first step to getting to the final point of being able to sell your service. Frequently in professional services, I'm now seeing a situation where a tender almost has a two-step structure to it. The first will be the document response. Putting together a good response gets you to a shortlist stage where you're then asked to present to the client. If you're in that situation, it's important to be very prepared for any sort of pitch that you might do to the buyers at the client end. Even if the pitch situation seems relatively informal, you should still be very clear about the plan you have, be very clear about the roles different team members will have in the pitch, rehearse as much as possible, ideally at least 2 rehearsals before you go and see the client. Also think about having peers within your organisation act as reviewers during this rehearsal stage. Often you'll find an extra pair of eyes from an objective perspective can really give you some insights into how you can sharpen up your pitch. And think very hard about the kind of props that you might need to bring your message to life. Nowadays it's not good enough to just use PowerPoint. Ideally you should be thinking about very simple visuals, perhaps mounted on A1 or A2 size board, to get your message across clearly and to use as an attractive part of your presentation. It's also important, once you find out the result, whether you've won or lost, to conduct a debrief with the client. Think very hard about the kind of things you want to find out from this debrief. Clients will often use price as an excuse when they're asked to explain why you didn't win their gig. Don't necessarily settle for that. Actively go to them asking for a debrief, ideally face to face, to find out more about the background behind the proposal, what their objectives were in the situation, what they thought of your response, whether they rated your presentation in terms of an objective count, and what else you could have done to advance your position in terms of winning or losing. And if you've won the proposal, still seek the debrief, because it's important to learn why you won it and to apply the lessons that you pick up from that situation to future proposals that you do. And now I turn to the part of this presentation which deals particularly with the industry that you're in, the building and construction industry. And I'm looking to make some, what I would call, bleeding edge predictions around what might happen in this industry over the next 2 or 3 years. The construction outlook for May 2011 has predicted that over the next 12 months there'll be a 9% growth in the building and construction sector. The thought from that publication is that engineering will continue to grow particularly vigorously, whereas commercial construction might be flat, but infrastructure and the developments around infrastructure in the mining and roading sectors particularly will be quite healthy. At the same time, there's obviously a war for talent raging, particularly in the quantity surveying space. It's very hard to get good quantity surveyors. There will be continued developments in such complex arrangements as alliancing. This will probably impact onto some of the tender and bid processes that you'll be asked to do over the next 2 to 3 years. The little things will still count. Being able to develop relationships, being able to get a clear understanding of what your clients want, being able to respond with a response that's succinct and very clearly outlines your understanding of all of those elements and puts forward a proposition which will put you in the driver's seat as a winner, all these things will remain important. What will your clients say if you ask them over the next year or so what they think about you and your sector? It's likely that they will say many of the responses that I've heard other clients in other professional services sector say about their lawyers or their accountants or their engineers. It's hard to get good people. Often when you do get them, they're expensive. Some of them are seen to be broadening and diversifying, and that's a good thing for a client, to be able to access quantity surveyors who also offer project management services perhaps. They will probably tell you that they can see your firms and your small businesses are putting much more effort into marketing yourselves. At the same time, the thing that differentiates that market is a very clear piece of evidence from you that you are making efforts to understand their business particularly. And that will be seen by them as an investment, and a valuable one at that. So if I had to put together for you a bid plan for the next 3 years, what would I be focusing on? I'd be thinking very hard about developing good networks and good forecasting methods so that you can understand what's happening in your market and anticipate the kind of tenders that might be coming up and coming your way well before the RFP is actually launched. I'd be thinking very hard about some kind of active program to develop the clients you have and to bring on board new clients as part of your business. I'd also be thinking very hard about an education program for the people you have working for you to train them in how to market themselves and market your firm and your services in a way to clients that very clearly articulates what it is you do that's different or better than your competitors. I'll be thinking very hard about how to put together a clear pricing strategy so you understand whether you're playing on the commoditised side of the market or whether you're looking to be a premium supplier of services and a premium pricer. I'd be thinking very hard about some kind of formalised bid strategy and process so that you understand what you need to do at every stage of the game, ideally before the tender hits your desk, to put yourself in the best position to win a bid. I'd be talking to clients as much as possible to learn from them, learn about what they need, understand from their feedback what you can do to improve your processes and systems. And I'd be thinking very hard about how to build your internal marketing resource, whether it's by employing trained marketers to act as more than just parties and pamphlets people, or whether it's by accessing external resources to give you the skills you need to operate in what is now a highly competitive market. What will result from making the efforts and learning from the lessons that I've articulated in the presentation today? What will be the return on investment for your time spent watching me talk about this topic? Well, if you take some of the ideas and some of the strategies and some of the tools that I presented to you in this session and apply them to your everyday business and pitching environment, you will improve your win rate. If you're currently sitting on a win rate of around about a third, so you win 1 out of every 3 tenders that you pitch into, you will find that you should increase your win rate to at least a half and ideally 3/4 of everything you pitch for. At the same time, you win better work. You'll develop more of an understanding around what the premium work entails and the way that you should be presenting yourself to win that work. And if you're operating in a commodity-driven, value-driven space, you'll understand how best to win that kind of work as well. You'll save a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of energy and stress applying the lessons and the processes that I've outlined today into your bids and tenders. You won't be caught having to work all hours of the day and night in the last week that a tender's due to get the response in or to prepare for the presentation. At the same time, you'll get a better understanding of the market you're operating in and a better set of data to be able to adjust your longer term marketing strategies as a result. And best of all, over time you'll be seen to be a player in the market, a market dominant firm. You'll be a firm that will attract the best clients, the best talent, you'll have the best IP, and ideally you'll have the best business in your particular space. So I'd encourage you all to think about what I've talked about today. Ask me any questions. On the very last slide are my contact details. I'm happy to engage in any sort of discussion or answer queries you might have on this topic. And I wish you all the very best in your tendering efforts.